at this session today. It is wonderful to have you here. We know that there are a lot of other really great sessions happening this afternoon, so thank you for choosing this one, and we hope you will find it useful. So this session is going to be talking about some I don't know, strategies and ideas that we have come up with over the past few years working with students on the adult diploma writing sample. We know that for a lot of students, this is one of the more difficult aspects, one of the more difficult pieces of evidence to go into the portfolio. And so we wanted to spend some time talking about it today. So if we can go to the agenda slide. And it is very possible. I am sure this is just me. There's something wrong with me, and that's okay. There's always something wrong with me, I think. So, that's all right. Okay. So, our agenda for today, we are going to talk about how we set expectations with our learners, go over some pre-writing ideas, talk about the research piece that is so important and oftentimes a little outside of what our students are used to, or a little bit different. It's a different type of writing from what our students are used to. We're going to talk about revising and editing a little bit. And at any time, if you have questions, please, please, please feel free to let us know, and we will try to answer you, and we'll try to be responsive. So my name is Stephanie Sommers, and I work for Minneapolis Adult Education. I am our adult diploma coordinator, and I am joined today by Birdie, who works at PPL. Go on, Birdie.
I am Birdie Harvala. I use they, them pronouns, and I am a teacher at Project for Pride in Living. I'm obviously not Denise Goldman, who is our site director over here at Diploma Connect, which is the name of our program. But standing in for her, and I feel very honored to fill those shoes.
Okay, and then were you gonna talk a little bit about how your diploma program works? Yeah.
Yes. So here at Diploma Connect, we have a very individualized type of program. It's self-paced by our students. We like to have requirements for how much work are done each week, but we don't have deadlines or anything like that. All of our curriculum is online, and so students are able to work from wherever they can get access to a computer and internet to get their stuff done. We don't have any classes, so we do a lot of one-on-one work in the classroom. If students show up, we have office hours, drop-in hours. So they will come into the classroom and we are able to work with them. Um, for writing, we have two online classes. We have a regular class that goes through like the entire essay process, into the weeds, all that stuff. And then we have a shorter course that we call the mini course that is a little bit more bare bones for our students that have some more writing experience, which doesn't happen very often, but for those students that we know are just going to get super bogged down in the details because they already kind of know what to do, that mini course is a great option for them because it just kind of is more of like a skeleton um, to help build up the essay. Um, yeah, so we made this, I say we, Denise made this little thingy to show the basic steps. But also no two programs are going to be the same. So some of these steps are essential for others, and we kind of develop it with each student.
Yeah, that's a great point, Birdie. So, In Minneapolis, we started offering the adult diploma about 5 years ago. So, right around COVID, which was a wonderful time to be starting a big new project with our learners. And I feel like we are constantly revising and changing how we provide this support. So, in our program, we are able to offer some. Um, in like standalone writing classes. However, as many of you can probably relate to, even in those classes, it is not only diploma students that we also have other HSE students with different goals. And so figuring out a way to get everyone working on activities that will feel meaningful for each person can be a challenge. One of the things that we do is rely on volunteers to help us meet our students where they're at. And we have also started a couple of support labs. We're very lucky that our program has been able to support and sustain that over the past few years. So we do a 2 hour lab on Friday mornings, and students can join either remotely or in person. And we've also do some labs that are after classes and during the week where students can come in and get more individualized support. They bring what they're working on, and there are teachers there who can help them to move forward. And we are wondering what kinds of settings you work in. So, do you teach in a one-room schoolhouse? Is most of your instruction online? Um, when you do diploma work, are you with students in a class? Are you doing more one-on-one support? It would be great to see how people are doing this if you wouldn't mind sharing in the chat. Okay, Jill says mostly one-on-one. Great. Anyone else working with students? Okay. Yep, I know a few of my colleagues are here. Okay, so we've got small classes of around 10, one-on-one, a lot of one-on-one independent study or small group work. Okay. Yeah, so I think that, oh, okay. And then in the DOC, about 10 students. Okay. So I think that's part of the challenge that you'll all be able to relate to is you come up with something that might work really well for one student, and then you're working with that student, you're feeling good, and then that student finishes, and maybe when you get your new students in, whatever you had just created might not work as well. So it's a constant readjusting and being responsive to the current needs. And part of what we're going to be talking about today is we hope to just kind of create space to talk about some of those challenges and to talk about our shared experiences and to reaffirm that this is difficult. It's not easy to do this work. It's not easy to be constantly trying to respond to such a wide variety of needs. So let's keep that in mind and keep sharing what we do together. And we will move on to setting expectations. And I know,
Yeah, so
oh, go on.
I'll just go. Setting expectations I think is really important. We do not want surprises. Surprises are kind of difficult to get around for a lot of students. Like you didn't say I had to do that. You didn't say this. You didn't say that. So we like to get it all out there right away. Um, yeah, the essay is one of the hardest parts for a lot of students. And I don't ever want to make it any harder for them. So it's really important to say that it's going to be difficult, that it's going to be hard, it's going to take some time, it's going to take some effort. There's going to be more than one draft. There's going to be at least two drafts, probably three. Um, yeah, so at the beginning, we kind of tried to downplay it at our enrollments. We'd be like, "Oh, the essay, it's quick, it's easy." But over time, we've learned that it is more important to say that we have Denise mention that it's going to take a bit of time. It's going to take some effort. Uh, but that we can do it and that we're here to support, all that stuff, all that stuff.
Yeah, and on the next slide, this is just sort of to reinforce the importance of setting those expectations. So these are real messages I recently received from a student. She is someone I had not set expectations with um, from the beginning. She's maybe like a lot of your students. She started her diploma work quite a while ago. I think it was maybe 2 years ago, and she's been in and out. And then when she went to start her essay, we had not really specifically talked about what to expect. And so she ended up using AI. She used quite a bit of AI, and first she started with a personal narrative, and I said, okay, we need it to be a little bit different, and we talked about that. Then she came up with another paper that was unfortunately almost all AI generated. And so after I said we needed to keep working, that was when I got some of these comments. And so I just wanted to kind of highlight, if this has ever happened to you, one way to, I think, get around this frustration is to constantly be reminding students of the expectations and the fact that this is going to take time and effort. You're going to need to be open to feedback, and you're going to have to make changes and revisions. And I know you guys have come up with a course, sort of a set of lessons that you take your students through, right, Birdie? So
Mhm.
you can
Yeah.
share
Yeah.
that.
So we start out our essay course. There's a whole bunch of units in this essay course, and each section is kind of going over a different part of the essay. And we kind of build it from the bottom up. So we start by saying just what the requirements are. And so on the left over here, this little list, you can see those are like little drop-down menus. Uh, so it says how should it be formatted. It's going to tell you how it should be formatted. All that stuff's in there. And then at the end of that, we have some little practice questions as well, so that students have to click like what font size should this essay be? They have to click the 12 point. So just trying to get a little bit of that interaction so that we know that these students have seen this, that they're looking at it. And then on the right is the checklist that we have on our like essay cover sheet. So we go through and we either write yes or no in that MET column, um, just to make sure that students know like what is going to need to be in there. And if they don't have it, then it's really easy to say this little box is not filled, it needs to be filled. So let's do this thing. These aren't requirements that we set up. These are requirements that the MDE is set up. So we're kind of able to offload a little bit of that like teacher pressure of students being like not happy about something. It's like, I did not make this. If we turn in an essay that's going to be rejected, it's going to be rejected. That's the way of it. Um, so they can't really charm us into letting it slide, which helps with some of that.
Okay. And on the next screen, on the next slide, I am showing something that we started this year. So to be honest, I would say before last spring, I had not had a lot of issue, so to speak, with students using AI. And then it started popping up. And I realized that we needed to come up with a learner agreement. And this was something we had talked about previously, and we had ideas, but we just hadn't actually put anything on paper. And so now, when students come into our program, we have them read this agreement, we talk about it, we have them actually initial, and you'll see the first two items here have to do with expectations around doing one's own original work, not getting help, not having someone else tell me what to write. And then also around using the internet. I know that I can't just Google answers. I can't use Chat GPT. We have students read this and sign it. And we do discuss this. And I have two children who are, one is a junior in high school, one just started college this year. And when they found out that I have these kinds of conversations with my learners, they were kind of like, really? You have to tell people not to use AI? And older folks or people who come from different backgrounds who do not have the same sort of digital native experience or who most of their academic career has not been informed by AI, they do not have the same understanding of it that we might. Or people who have maybe, we've got a lot of students who have been out of school for quite a while and then they came back and this is all new. And so I just want to say, yes, we do need to specifically name this with our learners and talk about it because it's not something everyone just knows not to do. I think for some students, there's this idea that we tell them the internet is a tool and we push them to use technology. And then in this other context, then we're saying, oh, well, technology's good, but you can't use it like this. So I think having these conversations is really important. And so we also wanted to ask, are other programs having any issues with AI? Have you noticed it creeping into students' work? Are you creating learner agreements or sharing any type of specific guidelines around AI use? We would love to know what people are doing because this is still relatively new. And I think that it's important to talk about. So I'll keep my eye on the chat to see if other people have had any issues. We're going to talk about this more when we get to our research piece, but another issue that we have had is when students Google something and they get those AI generated summaries of results. We have had to explain that that is not your source. Your source is when you click on the link and you actually go to the source. You can't just sort of copy directly from whatever the Google search response is. So, if anyone would like to share their experiences in the chat, I think it would be great to get some other perspectives, but we can also move on and Birdie, you can share your outline model that you use with your learners.
Mhm. So this is one version of the kind of color-coded outline that I made. We have used this kind of format a lot throughout the essay class. We keep on referring back to the same um, examples and stuff to kind of keep that continuity to help students see how it processes, how the essay process goes over time. So like this is just a really big view. The actual words of the essay aren't that important, but looking at the structure of it is kind of what we were going for here. A lot of people think that when they come into this essay course, they're like, okay, well, I'm writing about this thing, so you just need 5 paragraphs of me writing about this thing. And then we need to back up and say there's actually a structure to it. Your first paragraph isn't going to be about all the details and the evidence. The first paragraph is going to be introducing it. Um, that's where the thesis goes. But then in those body paragraphs, your thesis is going to show back up in each of those paragraphs. Because sometimes students will get a little bit lost on the way. They'll start with one idea, get to a different idea by that third body paragraph. So making sure that they have to refer back to the main thesis in each paragraph can help keep that cohesion in the essay. And I will move it on to the next one. Yeah, so at Diploma Connect, we did not have a requirement for people to come in person to work on the essay, but as time has gone on with certain students, it has been apparent that we need to require them to come in person just to avoid a lot of that back and forth email situation of what we're talking about with the AI, especially. That's been a really big thing that we've had to deal with as of late. um, is the first time that a student turns in something with AI, it's really hard to kind of dial that back and go back. Students will get frustrated, like, I already did this thing. Why are you making me do it again? Um, and so having students come in person so we can look at what they are actually working on, um, and draw connections between the writing that they've turned in, this AI writing that they've turned in, and whatever their actual resources are, whatever their actual topic is. Um, and so a lot of the times, just come in, we'll work with you in person. Sometimes we can do like a video chat and stuff too. But it's a lot easier to go through these expectations and then also work through the essay when you're with the student in person.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We also, of course, try to accommodate our learners as much as we can. And if it's easier for students to meet online, I try to do that. We use Schoology, so we'll meet in Schoology conferences, and I can share the screen and we can go through their essay. But I often find that what I would maybe get done in, say, 2 or 3 online sessions, if I can get the student to come in, it just goes a lot easier, and maybe one in-person session when we're sitting side by side. So again, the idea of setting expectations when students join us, yes, you can do most of this work independently or through distance learning for your instruction or by remote meetings, but there are probably going to need to be a few times when we will have to meet in person, and just letting folks know that so that they don't get frustrated later on. I think that's great. All right, we're going to move into pre-writing as sort of the first step to making sure that we have a strong finished product. And so we're going to talk for a minute about why do we even bother with pre-writing. And a few years ago, I did a session that was really all related to pre-writing activities, and I did quite a bit of research for that. And so some of the things that research tells us as far as the value of pre-writing is that it tends to lessen anxiety. It tends to increase learner confidence. I think those things go hand in hand. Um, Rather than just jumping right in and being told, okay, you need to write these, 500 words, doing pre-writing. Um, a lot of pre-writing is sort of those scaffolded steps where students are maybe doing brainstorming, doing outlining, where they get a feel for what the task is, and that helps to increase their confidence. They get a feel for the task in a more low stakes way. It tends to increase the number of ideas generated because sometimes the first idea might not turn out to be the best idea to move forward with. It increases the quality of the final product, and it reinforces the idea that writing is a process. So we're going through a process here. We can't just sit down and produce something and expect that to be our finished product. And I think another thing that reinforces that idea is when we are looking for a level E writing standard that we can that we're showing mastery of. One of those standards is about using the writing process and responding to feedback and working through multiple drafts. And so I think we can tell students that as well. This is actually one of the standards that we're supposed to be practicing and meeting by doing this work. And so this is not going to be a one and done activity. I need you to be open to feedback and be willing to make corrections, and this is going to take some time. So if we continue, research tells us that the more time that is devoted to pre-writing, to the pre-writing stage, the better the quality of the final written product. And experience tells us that the more time that is devoted to the pre-writing stage, the less frustration with multiple rounds of edits. So again, almost always, if a student jumps right in and writes their whole paper and submits it to me, the conversation is going to be more difficult than if we spend time at the beginning. And if we can catch some of these things when they're in the outline phase, for example, then students don't feel like they have wasted so much of their time doing the wrong thing. And I see you're shaking your head. Do you want to add anything, Birdie?
Yeah, I just really agree with that. It's a lot harder to kind of move backwards from something that's already made with AI. Um, it's really hard when you're having a conversation with a student, especially if they aren't willing to admit with AI usage, which can be frustrating at times, but also really understandable. Um, those expectations need to be set. And then also the little baby steps, the little bite-sized pieces, the little breadcrumbs of getting there can help students not take that giant leap and just turn in an essay um, and then have to ask, why isn't this right? But yeah, I really agree with what you're saying. It creates a lot of less frustration when we have those expectations set and when students follow the path that is laid out for them.
Yeah. So we're going to look at specifically what do we mean when we talk about pre-writing activities. So some pre-writing activities for the diploma essay might include choosing an appropriate topic. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in just a moment. Deciding if you want your essay to be argumentative or informative, and making sure that students understand there are some differences between those two styles when it comes to formatting and what we're going to need to include in our finished product. Being able to locate reliable sources is one. We sometimes a student wants to choose a topic that might seem a bit like it's very interesting to them, but then I need to ask, okay, well, is that something we're going to be able to find sources about? And if not, then that's not going to work for this particular part of your portfolio. Using source material to create a thesis statement is something Birdie will talk more about in just a minute, but that is really important rather than coming up with an idea and then trying to find the research to support that idea. We want to do some research and let that research inform what we want to say about our topic. Outlining and organizing information, and then looking at mentor texts. And we are going to spend a lot of time on mentor texts and or a little time on mentor texts in just a minute. So if we continue, just a few words of, I guess, words to the wise about choosing a topic. So first of all, no narratives. A lot of students want to tell a story, and that makes sense because that's sort of the type of writing they're most familiar with. And we need to explain that that is not this particular task. This task is not a story. We can sometimes work in some personal details, maybe in our introduction, but that can't be the main meat of this. One thing I sometimes tell students is if you have a lot of experience with this topic and you really want to make it more personal, the room for that might come when you do your oral presentation, for example. That can be less formal. That can be a time for sharing more anecdotal information. So we don't have to discount that, but it's not part of this task. Another thing to think about is the student should be interested in the topic, but not too invested. So we want the student to be interested enough to persist through doing the research and writing all these drafts. But if a student is extremely invested about a topic, we sometimes get, as they say, up in our feelings about that topic. And it can be really hard then when giving feedback for it not to feel like the feedback is extremely personal. like a critique of their experiences rather than more objective feedback on the writing. So keeping that in mind, I think can be helpful. And then the last one, not too niche, is just related to that idea that we do have to find outside sources of information. So occasionally, say a student might want to write about a person from their home country. As an example, that's happened with me. And that's always great as long as we can find that information from other sources. So just keeping that in mind when we are moving into choosing a topic. And then I know, Birdie, you're going to talk a little bit more about this idea of how to come up with a thesis.
Hmm. Yeah, so we found pretty soon on that having students start with a thesis and then try and do the research, it doesn't end up super well. Students will um, have a hard time finding sources that are directly supporting what they're saying because they've already figured out what their point is going to be. And so we kind of moved to just having a broader topic at the very beginning is just what topic do you want to talk about? Um, we have a specific assignment that's like, uh, generally, what do you want to talk about? So that could be something like the environment. And then we're like, okay, get narrower. Um, I want to talk about environmental impacts. Okay. And then, even narrower than that, I want to talk about the environmental impacts of electric cars. So, that is a topic that's not a thesis. So, at that point, then our students can go and find the sources that are going to help support that topic. And then from there, we can determine 2 to 3 main ideas related to the topic. Um, and then we require our students to get 2 sources and then turn those into me so I can look at them and make sure that they're real websites and not just some unknown document that doesn't link to anything. And then after that, after reading those articles, students will create those 3 main ideas or update them if they need to. We'll have a lot of students think they know their 3 main ideas, do some more research, and then realize that they actually need to switch 1 or 2 of them. And then finally, once those main ideas have been determined, we're going to go back to the topic and then figure out a thesis statement. And then we include all of those 3 main ideas in the thesis statement so that our students can see in 1 to 2 sentences exactly what they're going to be writing about.
Great. And then I'm going to share a little bit. So, if like me, you were in the wonderful session this morning with Jamie, where she talked about differentiation and voice and choice, I kept thinking about all of the different scaffolds that are required to do this work. And so we have one document that we give to students. It includes space for brainstorming, it includes an outline. It includes some resource links, and we have it all just in one place to make it easier for students, and it is shared in your participant folder. And just the idea that linking things is great. Remember that links can be a scaffold, sharing videos can be a scaffold, and I don't know, somehow giving students a document that has the outline uh, already written out works better than telling them to make an outline. And so just those little things, like if I say, well, we need to start with an outline, even if I showed them an outline, that does not work as well as actually giving them the outline. So this is one of those types of scaffolds that we've been using. The link here goes to Purdue University Global Academic Success Center, and it talks about finding a topic for this type of paper. And I think we can go to the next slide.
Yes. So using AI as a tool for pre-writing. So for students, AI can be helpful sometimes to make a list of topics, don't know what to do at all, help with a list, suggest specific research questions or things to look up for students that don't have a lot of experience with research. It can also help with organizing or suggest section headings to like logically group information. And then for teachers, it can be used to generate mentor texts if needed, show poor writing examples, create sentence starters, and then also it can help suggest and guide feedback. For if AI is taught well, it can be a really great tool for students to use. But without some kind of AI coaching or direction, it can end up being their resource or kind of like a detriment to their essay process.
Yeah, and I wanted to add, I know that there are different feelings about AI use. I know that there are environmental concerns as well as more esoteric concerns around what my son calls brain rot and things like that. But I guess my point is it is out there. Our students are probably aware of it, or many of them are. And so I do think we can I think not mentioning it at all might not be the right choice. So, whatever your feelings are about it, I do think it's important to just in some way acknowledge it, whether or not you want to spend a lot of time acknowledging it, or whether or not you want to talk with your students in any way about how they might use it appropriately in this process, I think is up to each program to decide. Um, but it is out there, and so I think, maybe at a minimum, just acknowledging it with students is an important part of this process in 2026. And if we go to the next slide, I just wanted to show an example of how it could be used for pre-writing. So these are screenshots of my AI search that I did to look for sources. So my search query was, can you suggest some reliable sources for an academic research paper related to the life cycle of the common loon? And so these different research papers came back. These might be a bit, I don't know. I'd have to look at them. These might be a bit too researchy, and then I might need to refine my search a little bit. But it is fairly easy to use AI to do things like this, to at least get started with a source if you're not sure where else to look. So just keeping that in mind. And again, if anyone wants to share about AI in the chat, I'd love to know other people's opinions and how they're using it or not using it, or what they talk to their students, how they talk to their students about it. That would be great. Um, because of time, we're going to move on to mentor texts. So, a mentor text is a high quality piece of writing used as a model for students to study and imitate. Mentor texts are chosen because they demonstrate specific writing elements like tone, structure, organization, or argumentation. They are meant to show what good writing looks like for a particular purpose. And so, if we go to the next slide, for quite some time, I have used this example. This is one of the first essays that I ever submitted as from our program when Minneapolis started doing the adult diploma. One of the first students I worked with was interested in becoming a mechanic, and he wrote this text called Road to Automotives. And for a few years now, I hand it out to students. I want to say I asked him permission. I said, would it be okay if I used your text as an example for others? When I hand it out, it has a watermark that says student example on it. But I do share it with students because I strongly believe students need to be given some sort of an example. And so I'll talk for a minute about why I like this text and why I choose it as one of my mentor texts. So, for one thing, in our program, we often have students double up on their writing sample also being used as they're developing a future pathway evidence. So, unless a student has other ideas, if they come in saying, I really want to write about this, that's great. If they don't have anything to use for their developing a future pathway, we usually say, hey, this is something you could do. Then we could use it in multiple ways in your portfolio. What do you think about that? And so it is kind of a common type of writing sample that we tend to submit. Also, I love this writing sample because the author did a good job, a solid job of maintaining a mostly professional tone, but there is also so much of his voice and personality that comes through in this writing sample. And then he also did a very good job of supporting his ideas with examples and details. There's a lot of specific information in here. So I used to hand this out just as an example, and then I wanted to make it better. And so I fully annotated this text to create an annotated writing sample example. This is in your participant folder, I believe. So what you will see is his paragraph, his writing, and then underneath that in a box, you'll see my comments. So I talk about why do I think this is a great introduction? Because it's a compelling hook with a direct thesis statement. And so, yes, it took a little bit of time to create this, but now we'll be able to use it with all of our students going forward. And now now when I give them this and they read it, because of my comments, I will know that they are taking away from it what I want them to take away from it, rather than just leaving it up to chance. Like you're going to read this and you're going to automatically understand why I gave it to you. I am telling them why I gave it to them. So if we go on to the next slide, um, so we've got some information here. Mentor text can provide a clear example of what the writing task should look like. They go beyond the teacher telling to showing. A good mentor text should be something that the teacher identifies as high quality work and the students are going to be able to relate to, which is why I think it's important to use student produced work if at all possible, rather than grabbing something just online that might have been written by, someone who's in their third year of college, for example. And then the best results will happen if you use the mentor text as a teaching tool, going through it with the students and discussing what makes it a great example. So this is similar to using a think aloud approach. And some of these ideas for how to use a mentor text I got from some different blogs that I was reading, and those are included at the end of the slide deck if you wanted to look them up for yourself. And if we go to the next slide, so here's just a little bit of an example of how I might talk through this with a learner. So um, this I'm focusing on how he is able to take out personal pronouns. So what are two examples of places in the text where the author avoids using personal pronouns like you when discussing these steps? So rather than writing you must, you need to, we're going to look for places where the author said the author uses or one needs to. Um, I'm not sure what the author uses. That might have been my own brain malfunction, but one needs to. He uses passive voice in here. And so just talking through that with learners, I think as a teaching tool is a great approach. And with that, I know you're going to talk about some outlines and such. Yes, great.
Hmm. Yeah, so these are a whole bunch of different examples of outlines. I think since I started working With Diploma Connect, we've probably gone through like 4 or 5 different versions of outlines, and we've just been trying to figure out what the best way is. There is no perfect way, um, but I think that these examples will have completed examples for students to see, which has been really helpful in them seeing like what an example of what something good looks like. And sometimes they complete the outline, but if they don't follow it, sometimes I try to skip this step and the essay is super unorganized. So making sure that we have this breakdown bit is really important. So right now the two with the blue writing on it are the ones that we have in our class currently. The ones on the left are older versions. But by asking a question, students can answer that question. What background info or overview does your reader need for the introduction? So students can see how that could be done. It doesn't need to be full sentences. It could just be phrases and stuff, which having all these visual examples is really handy for students to do it with their own topic and with their own research. So we are going to move on to research and organization, kind of leading into that with the outline. Um, but we're going to start with research. So for us, we require our students to have at least 2 sources uh, that help support their topic. So we have a lesson on finding reliable resources because that has been pretty difficult for our students and a lot of students. We have students turn in everything from peer-reviewed white papers that use academic language that even I don't understand, to personal narrative blogs written by some online reviewers. We also have students think that the AI summary, like we said, is a resource in and of itself, which is not true. So now we have a video lesson on finding good sources. This little John Green video. Thank you, John Green, for your help with this one. But he kind of goes through lateral reading, looking how to find sources, how to make sure sources are reliable. And so when we have students send us the resources that they're going to use, we require them to tell us why it's a reliable resource. And just saying like it has good information is not going to be the correct answer to that. We require students to really dig in and figure out why it is that that source is reliable in a real way. Move on. You're muted.
I'm sorry. Some of you might be familiar. There are a couple different sort of frameworks for helping students with the idea of incorporating evidence, which is another challenge because we can find the evidence, but then incorporating it successfully involves explaining why we decided to include this particular quote or why is this statistic important? How does it relate back to our main idea? And so one acronym we can use is ICE or ICA. I've also seen the I stands for introduce. And so teaching students to use some signal phrases such as according to or suggested by can be useful. And then cite, you can either paraphrase or use a direct quotation with an in-text citation for the evidence. But the really important part is the explain or analyze. Explain why this information is important. Try to tie it back to the topic sentence or main idea of the paragraph so that it's clear to your reader why you pulled out this particular piece of information and why you think it supports the other ideas in your paragraph. So if we continue,
This is kind of an example of how we have our students organize their evidence. So uh, this Moose and More About Them is a student example. We use a lot of student writing as our mentor text. Um, they just are some of the best examples to use because they're um, done really well and really accessible for our students. So once we have those main ideas and the resources, the students need to really dig into the resources to find out the information for their main ideas. So you can see on the little bottom one on the right, I created a video lesson where I showed the main topic, the thesis, those three main ideas. I assigned each of them a color, and then I showed, like I screen recorded myself on the iPad going through the resources that this student had for their essay and highlighting evidence that relates to each of those things. So I went through it the first time to read it to try and find the moose's role in the ecosystem, went back up to the top and I read through it trying to find the cultural impact with the red highlighter, so on and so forth. So having that modeling has been really great for students. So instead of students turning in an assignment that is definitely not correct, I can just say, hey, go back to this video, watch this video, try it again. We don't need to do this back and forth thing if I have really easy directions. Um, and so this kind of came up as we were receiving a lot of AI essays. And so students would have citations in these AI essays, but you'd go back to the citation and it would not be the same information. There'd be names mentioned, dates mentioned, or whatever, because AI can sometimes group it all together and then spit out something that has sources, but it's not always going to align. So we wanted to make sure that students' information and their sources are aligning. So that's what that color coding situation has really played a big role with. So now at this point, it's a part of our class. Everyone has to do it, not just the students that turn in an AI paper. Um, but I really cannot. This step has been absolutely um, like monumental for a lot of our students in feeling super connected to the essay process and really connected to the outline. Instead, it helps with that skip from the outline and the topics to the actual writing as well.
I love that scaffolding idea, Birdie. And I wanted to call out a comment that Nikki put in the chat. So Nikki, if I don't understand this, please tell me. So when you do a search, when your students do a search query, so when they put in Google, like, you know, do moose live in Minnesota or moose habitat in the US? If you type minus AI, then Google does not bring back any AI information. I did not know that. That's a gem.
Correct. Yeah,
Wow.
my volunteers told me that. So then they should just get legitimate sites after that. They still have to decide whether they're reliable sources, but at least they won't get the AI response right away.
Okay, I did not know that, and I love that. Thank you for sharing. That's fantastic. Okay, so we'll continue just because I talk too much and now we're running out of time. But I wanted to continue to kind of link this back to other information we've heard today. So I remember Jamie this morning when she was talking about scaffolds, she mentioned a word bank. And in particular, for this academic language for introducing a quote or introducing when you're taking another's ideas, providing our students with some of these language frames or a word bank is a great scaffold. These things come from Brandeis University. There's a few more on the next slide. These are for explaining a quote or a paraphrase and how. So the last were to introduce that quote. This is to explain how it connects back to other information in our text or in our paragraph, I'm sorry, in our writing. And I did include just a mini example of where a student attempted to do this. So this comes from a piece of writing. One of our students, her essay was called The Requirements, Roadblocks, and Rewards in Nursing. So there are a wide variety of places to work as a nurse, according to the Minnesota Department of Health. And then she talks about a report states that over 50% of RNs, then we've got that in-text citation. And then, it's not anything special, but at least at the end, she included a sentence that said, "These settings give future nurses many options to work." And so just explaining why she included this information in here, because it linked back to a point she was making about her topic sentence, a wide variety of places to work as a nurse. And so I think even encouraging our students to do something this simple is a great way of giving them practice with that ICE model that we looked at earlier. All right, we are going to move into revising and editing. Take it away, Birdie.
So when we start on this process, we always reset our expectations again that we're going to look at that essay checklist. We are going to talk about the materials that they've already created, and then remind students that it's going to take 2 to 5 drafts. Also, the AI rule might have to come into play again. There's really no way to set expectations too many times. So, especially with students that might walk away from the process and come back, it's good to remind them. And a lot of students think when they write that first draft that they're done. They did it, they drafted it. And so it's really important just to remind them that that isn't the case so that there's no surprises. So this next one, we use mentor texts and examples as often as possible. So this moves essay is back again. And the highlighting and the color coding. So we're kind of looking at an example paragraph. So when students are learning how to write a paragraph, they can have this topic that they've already seen in research, they've already seen in my example video, will come back again. So they can help kind of take that process and put it onto their essay and their writing. Um, so all of these examples and stuff have been used because we have had pitfalls. We've fallen into a pothole of something. And so we realized that there was a gap that was too big or some sort of leap that we were not covering. And so having these examples have been the trial and error. Our class was not created overnight. I feel like I've been recreating lessons since I started. Every few months, I'll think of a new idea to put in, or I'll replace the outline or something, all that stuff. And so next, we're going to go on to feedback. So we have a little document that Denise put together for when I first started. I was like, I don't know how far into this feedback process I should go for students. I was used to doing it differently. And so I wanted to know, like, give me a list. Um, what should I look for in the first draft? What should I look for in the second draft? And so this little thingy can help us, help me, but then also it helps students not get too much feedback at the same time. Um, so it really helps us look at our initial feedback and kind of set up the feedback for students over time. Um, yeah, so the minimum requirements you're looking for in that first draft is really important. We don't want to overload students with too much feedback at one time. Um, be clear and review feedback with students. So less is more. I like to be really concise. I like to use the same patterns in all of my feedback, use the same colors to represent the same things in each of the drafts. I also avoid editing symbols they don't know unless I go through it with them and show them this is what that means. Instead, I'll just write it out in words, no capital here, whatever. And then also, I like to go through it with students to kind of show, do a little think aloud moment where I'm going through and being like, oh, well, I think that this word is probably not needed. And that can be a really nice thing to do when I'm with the student during that in-person situation. And so for our feedback at Diploma Connect, we like to use our iPads and we will write directly on the document. Like we'll change the Google essay into a PDF and then I'll write right on there exactly what I want. I can send it to them online and then they can edit their essay and send it back to me. Um, I do this virtually. I also do it in person a lot. It is a lot easier in person, but we're always trying to cater to our students' needs and stuff. And so doing that online can be possible, especially if I'm able to like share the screen of my iPad to show them that they're going through it. It also helps with having students be able to check off what they've done when they've done it. Um, So I think that that feedback process has been really important.
All right, so this is another something that I came across just doing a bit of research, and this idea comes from the University of Minnesota. They have a project called Writing Across the Curriculum, and it's called the 5-Minute Revision Workshop. So it's a 3-step process that I think could be very useful. So it just starts with the teacher showing the students a writing sample that includes some type of relevant writing issue. So this could be anything from grammar errors to maybe an introduction not including a thesis statement to a body paragraph with no topic sentence. But the teacher shows the example and the students try to identify what's the problem. And then this second step, I think, is so interesting. The students are asked to diagnose why they think the writer might have made the mistake. So, um, it could be the writer forgot, or the writer thought that this sentence was their thesis, but it's not clear enough, or just kind of having that conversation. And then they suggest, well, how could we remedy this? How could we fix the problem? And then the third step involves the students reflecting on ways to look for the same issue in their own writing. So if we know why the mistake might be made and we know how to fix it, then hopefully when we go through our own writing, we're going to be successful in catching more of our own mistakes. And so they provided a example here. So this is an example from a biology paper. And so if you look at it, it is really just a string of sort of informational tidbits. So a bit of information and the source, a bit more information and the source. And what's missing is there's no synthesis, there's no analysis, there's nothing that explains why these details were included. And so while I might not use this exact example with my learners, I think it is maybe a good activity and something that could be adapted to be used with our adult ed students. So just kind of, I like that it's fast. I like that it involves student reflection. And I could also see, pulling examples from my students' writing. So they're working with their own you know, writing, so it's very authentic. So we included a link to this on our resources, and we can go on to using AI. So part of the revising and editing process might be another opportunity to use a little bit of AI. You can look for specific ways that the writing meets a given standard. As the person who submits writing samples for our program, I often do this before I submit, and I include that information with my submission, my portfolio submission. Of course, I read through it and I make sure I agree with it, but often I feel like AI is pretty good at finding examples of things like, can you highlight specific examples of sentence variety in this text? I've not really come across problems with doing things like that, and it saves me time, and it's a way that we can celebrate what the student is doing really well. And then, of course, you can also ask the chatbot to suggest specific ways to strengthen the writing and talk about those with the learner as well. So, AI is a tool that can be very useful and can be a time saver, in particular if you're having to provide a lot of feedback for multiple students. All right, Birdie.
So this is just a message. It takes time. Our students usually go from 2 to 5 drafts, and we just make it clear it's never just going to be the one and done. It can be really frustrating for students, but I like to remind them that the last thing that I want to do is make it more difficult for them, and that I also really want them to finish as well. I really want them to be done. But I'm not going to turn in an essay that I know is going to be rejected or will need edits. And that can kind of be a hard thing to hear sometimes. Um, but it is far more efficient to do it right the first time than it is to turn it in and have it be rejected. Denise said, just like construction, you measure twice and cut once, and so that's what this kind of is. So next, we're going to go on to submitting. Um, so I submit a lot of our writing portfolios. And so for our submissions, we include our cover sheet with the standards explained, and then also explained how the student achieved that standard, how it is going to be marked up in the essay, that this example will be highlighted in this color or whatever, just so that our reviewers can have an easy time looking for those things. We have the essay checklist that I showed at the beginning. I also provide rough drafts.
Stephanie, I think Birdie's frozen.
Okay, I didn't know
Job,
if it was just
whatever,
me.
Oh,
showing that
there.
oh, my internet. Um, and then the last thing that I have on there is the final essay that students have, which I will mark up. I mark each of the drafts with the number of draft it is, and my comments and feedback are all on there. But then in the last one, it's a little bit more simplistic. I just mark the thesis. I mark that they reached all these standards. I'll point out transitions. I'll point out all the things that the student did to help hit those um, hit those boxes that are needed. Uh, Yep, that's basically it. And then I turn it all in and hope for some goodwill and tell our students that they did a great job.
Great. And
Questions?
we have a couple minutes left, and I know we've done a lot of talking, and we do want to create space for others. So Laura she's never included the rough drafts in the final submission. She keeps them in their folder portfolio binder until they receive their official diploma. Yeah. I know in Birdie's program, they often use the level E standard around the working through a drafting process. I'm sorry, do you know which one that is, Birdie? I bet you do. What standard is that?
I don't.
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
don't.
Okay. Okay. Um, well, it is one of the level E.
Anchor 2, maybe? I can't remember. I'm literally writing it all the time, but
Okay. So because that is the standard that they often choose, then they do submit many beautifully annotated drafts as part of the evidence to show us how the students have incorporated the various bits of feedback. So yeah, I'm gonna check it out right here. What about, are there questions or comments? Or it is Anchor 5, actually. Develop and strengthen writing as needed by planning, revising, editing, rewriting, or trying a new approach. So Anchor 5 is the one that um, involves the drafts. So we would love to hear from anyone else, if or any comments or questions or anything that you have struggled with that you'd like to get some feedback from the group about? I'm trying to be good at wait time.
I was trying to type, but that takes too long.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm wondering about contact hours. I feel like we lose a lot of time because students do take this home, work on it, maybe submit a draft. Are people using TVMs? What are they doing to get some contact hours out of this?
Yeah. So for us, since we have an essay course online, I've created TVMs for, I think we have about 4 TVMs for the essay process. And we use the lesson, the practice. We have students, we have little quizzes and stuff that we've put in there. And then the assessment is going to be like when they turn in their sources or explain why they're reliable sources, stuff like that. So we use TVMs to get those contact hours. And then also when we require students to come into the classroom, at that point we can get some more of those hours as well. But for sure we have some TVMs built in to the essay course so we can get that.
And, I'll add, I know for our math, we have put together a series of practice packets for some of those different areas. And so I'm just kind of thinking, and maybe Jody or Astrid could let me know if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking if a student took home, say, an essay outline, or yeah, the outline document, and brought that back completed and marked on it how long they spent working on that, that would be similar to doing something like a packet, and could you not count that for contact hours or hours of instruction or like homework?
So,
Yeah.
um, well, you can't count hours for homework. In order for it to be allowable as a TVM lesson, the lesson needs to include instruction, practice, and assessment. So there needs to be an instructional component. So just taking the essay home to work on it would not be allowable under the TVM model. They would need to be like had the packet would need to include some instruction around how to complete that um whatever like that aspect of the essay writing process.
Right. I'm sorry. I was thinking about not contact hours. I was thinking about showing evidence of instruction for the purposes of adult diploma. So yeah, I was a
Ah, okay.
different idea. Yes, yes, yes,
Yep.
yes. But yeah, the TVM lessons is a great idea. And I have never really looked. Have you ever looked, Birdie, like in Khan Academy to see if they have anything around this type of writing? I know Aztec does have some. Um, I'm not as familiar with like Edmentum these days or Plato. But I know those are
Yeah,
other things.
I just I wanted us to get TVM hours for all this work students were doing, so I just kind of made it myself. Um, it's complicated because there's all 3 parts of the lesson, the practice and the assessment, and the practice and the assessment can be kind of similar when it comes to the writing. So it that needed to be differentiated. A lot of other like online programs or online quizzes or whatever aren't going to have the 3 things, just kind of be 2. Um, and so that's why I made them myself. So like the lesson might be the video, and then the practice is we have like questions in the videos that they have to answer. And then the assessment is the assignment that they turn in.
That's good. All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. And thank you, Birdie, so much for stepping in when Denise got ill. This was really great. So thank you all. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Birdie.